Majesty's Submarines has just slipped from her berth at HMS Dolphin, a short distance from the Submarine Museum. She's on her way out of Portsmouth Harbour, bound for, well, somewhere. Ask a submariner where he's going, and he'll probably just say, out. Submarines have to be secret to succeed and survive. But now the Royal Navy Submarine Museum brings them to the surface to tell the story of submarines, from the earliest times to the present nuclear age.
Authorised, Captain. Press the klaxon twice, dive the submarine.
Press the klaxon twice, dive the submarine.
Press the klaxon twice. Lumpkin. Half it together. Authorised in tower.
Upper lid shut.
Upper lid shut.
30 feet. 50 feet.
Prepare all hatches forward.
60 feet.
Authorised, pipe the submarine, watch dive, control quiet state.
How did this huge mass of metal get underwater? Submarines are not all alike, but their principles are the same. Take HMS Alliance, for example. Long tanks, called main ballast tanks, are strapped to each side of the pressure hull. The ballast tanks have holes at the bottom, which are always open, and holes at the top, which are plugged by main vents. When Alliance dived, the main vents at the top of the tanks were opened to let air out, and then water flooded in naturally through the open holes at the bottom. The boat submerged with neutral buoyancy. That means she weighed exactly the same as the water she displaced. In that condition, she tended neither to rise nor sink. When the captain wanted to surface again, the main ballast water was blown out by high-pressure air, and up she came. But while dived, she had to be controlled. So she was fitted with two pairs of hydroplanes, forward and aft. These hydroplanes could be tilted as the submarine went along, to give the boat a bow down or bow up angle, enabling her to change depth. And when she was at the right depth, anything down to 500 feet, small movements on the planes were enough to keep her there. When you see HMS Alliance, you may be surprised how large she is, and wonder how she could be balanced so precisely. Your guide will be glad to explain the art of trimming, as it's called. Not that submarines have always been the same size as Alliance. Holland 1, Britain's first submarine boat, is shown at the top of the picture for comparison. And at the bottom, a giant nuclear ballistic missile submarine dwarfs her older sisters. Drawings of Holland 1 show what can be fitted even into a tiny space. The Edwardian press pointed out that this little boat was a yard shorter than a cricket pitch. The father of all modern submarines, the Irish-American inventor John Philip Holland, emerges from the conning tower of his latest American design in 1898. We hope you'll look round the Royal Navy's Holland 1 later. Here are some of the early British Holland boats, pictured in and around Portsmouth Harbour at the beginning of the century, when Gosport became the home of submariners. Before we return to big submarines, we'll take a glance at the little wartime midgets known as X-craft. There is one on show, which achieved such spectacular successes by attacking enemy ships in harbour. X-craft officers and men won 4 Victoria Crosses during World War II. Then, as a sideline, 2 X-craft actually led the invasion force on D-Day in 1944 and marked the exact spots for amphibious forces to land. Here's one of them immediately after the landing. This is an even sneakier kind of craft. Based on an ordinary torpedo, it was called a chariot, which wasn't a bad name, because the 2 crewmen had literally to ride it without any protection from the sea, except for clumsy diving dresses.
Der Ein-Mann-Torpedo der Kriegsmarine. Der Gefeite Gerold, der im todesmutigen Einsatz mit dieser Waffe einen schweren britischen Kreuzer versenkte, macht sich zum Start.
The German Navy too had midget submarines, and you'll be seeing one of those.
Torpedo in Fahrt.
But of course, much larger boats were needed to take the war to the enemy far out at sea. Here's a British T-class submarine leaving Alexandria in 1942 and on patrol in the Mediterranean. The gun in those days was a very useful weapon. Today, it's been replaced by missiles of one kind or another, and submariners used it to great effect. On the other side, German U-boats very nearly brought Great Britain to her knees during both world wars. The prime targets were convoys of valuable merchant ships, and it was in order to destroy shipping that U-boats fought and eventually lost the Battle of the Atlantic. A U-boat commander usually dived when he'd got close enough to a convoy. Then it was his deadly task to single out and torpedo ship after ship if anti-submarine forces couldn't stop him. Prime Minister Winston Churchill said that the German U-boat menace was the only thing that ever really worried him during the war. The potential submarine threat is greater than ever today. Let us hope that we never go to war again. But it is the Royal Navy's duty to be prepared. And these are the sort of huge steel sharks, very rarely glimpsed on the surface, that might have to be challenged in the depths. They're far more powerful than their wartime predecessors. As it happens, these are Soviet nuclear submarines. But it's worth remembering that 41 navies have submarine services, and more are likely to join the club before long. A British nuclear-propelled submarine is an impressive sight cutting through the waves. Although like most modern boats, she's faster underwater. Anyway, she'd never reveal herself when on business, so to speak. But let's return to our submarine, which is now comfortably submerged and keeping very quiet. While 1/3 of the crew is on watch and others maintain machinery and equipment, the remainder relax. Food is important, and that's good stuff nowadays. Wartime submariners can hardly believe there are choices on the menu, or that the chef has clean hands.
Okay.
There's even water for washing, an almost unheard of luxury in the old days. And the heads, as the Navy calls loos, are civilized and no longer hazardous. But energy for propulsion and all the electrical equipment has to come from somewhere. So periodically, the gigantic diesel generators in our non-nuclear boat have to be run to charge the electric batteries. And that means sticking up a snort tube to suck in air. A nuclear power plant, on the other hand, needs no air. There's an explanation of how it works in the museum. There'd be no point in having all this machinery, all these men, without effective weapons. Here, one of Marconi's Tigerfish wire-guided homing torpedoes is loaded into a torpedo tube. We'll soon watch it being put to use. The captain of our submarine receives a routine signal from the wardroom.
Captain, sir. Signals for the 2100 routine.
All seems peaceful. But a possible enemy contact is being plotted in the control room.
Captain, sir,
And the sound room can hear the distinctive noise which it makes. The captain orders action stations and prepares to attack.
004 moving slow left.
Stand by, all round look. Raise forward. Target in sight, bearing green 30. Stand by 1 and 2 tubes. 1 and 2 tubes ready, roger. Stand by, final target set up.
TCC ready. Should be green 30.
Bearing that. Shoot. Fire.
One Tigerfish is on its way, and then another. There's no need to look long at the result. The deed is done. and in wartime, nobody need know who did it. So far as we are concerned, our submarine is still unseen, undetected, and the captain is free to steal away and hunt fresh prey. And now for the full story, please wait for your guide, who'll take you to Her Majesty's Submarine Alliance.